So you said that's another story. So you moved to Houston, and how did that go?
Well, um, some guy he knew to get a lot of jobs in Houston. So Clyde, my daddy and Clyde got on the train, come to Houston, left Mama and me at Beaumont. I was about 6 months old. They came over here and the band they had at the time, I guess Shane Kennedy was on bass, and who else they got. They got to the train station. The guy's supposed to meet them, and he wasn't there. And so Dad said, "Well, let me call him." So he called. He couldn't get any answer. He said, "Well, I got an address where he lives. We'll go out there and meet him. We'll have all these playing jobs." We get out to the place, and Clyde said that he was living at the boarding house, and the owner was putting all his stuff out in the yard. They done kicked him out. Don't know where he was. So at that time in Houston, you have a lot of places around Airline Drive and places like that you could play. So he said, "Well, let's just get out there and get on a city bus, old Pioneer bus, and go out there." Daddy knew Houston well. Went to this one place and heard the band play it, and Clyde said actually he knew Daddy's band was better than them. So Daddy asked him about playing. He said, "Well, come in tomorrow, play us a couple soon." So he did, and he said, "Okay, you're hired." And so basically, he said, "How much do you get paid?" And Daddy gave him a real high amount. And he said, "Oh, we wouldn't take anything less than X amount of dollars." And the guy come back and said, "I'll give you like a third of that." And Daddy said, "Unload the stuff, boys." So they started playing. They got enough money and finally moved Mama and I here to Houston. Stayed in some old rundown place in downtown Houston and lived in a bunch of different places. But from then on, pretty much we lived in Houston and Clyde did. And Clyde would go back and forth to Beaumont because his daddy still lived over there. And he'd go over and play a lot. And of course, Clyde's career really took off about that time. And he played so good, so many people hired him to work with him. And of course, later on, he had his own band, the River Road Boys.
You said that your dad had a lot of wrote a lot of songs, and his briefcase probably had tons and tons of songs, sheet music. What did he have a music room or anything that had like a lot of his records, a lot of anything like that, or is he pretty much just focused on today and trying to get the next big hit?
Yeah, pretty much focused on today. He had that stuff, but he didn't have them hung on the walls or anything like that. Whatever he had was in that old scrapbook. I don't remember anything like that. Now, one time, I'll tell this story about prayer room in the White House. Uh, People would come to him that have words or stuff, and Daddy would put music to it. So a couple of women that had found out they were going to reopen a prayer room in the White House, the early '50s. Wanted him to put music to it, so he did. And a big deal, they had recorded on a little 45 called "Prayer Room in the White House." Bad recording. Anyway, uh, Daddy notified the Library of Congress and the White House and all. A few days later, he gets a letter in the mail, very official, and he opened it up real excited. It's to notify you there is no prayer room in the White House. It's in the Pentagon or something that way. Man, he's had all these 45 records made, no place to sell them. Me and my best friend took them. We invented frisbees. We'd take them and threw them out there. I said, "Look, Daddy, your records are really selling." And Mama took some of them and put them in the oven and it'd get hot, and she'd fold them up, make it, hang them on the wall, put flowers in them. Daddy said, "Look at this, a songwriter, and my career has come to this." It didn't quite work out for him.
Do you have a lot of musicians when you were a kid growing up? Who all did you get to see come over?
Oh man, I couldn't even name all of them. Lots of them that I knew, of course. Clyde being number one. Dickie Jones, great fiddle player, musician. Benny Leaders. The one thing I will remember, and there's a studio in Houston, one of the most famous recording studios in the United States, called Sugar Hill. Used to be Gold Star. Bill Quinn started back 1940, whatever it was. At that time, the front room of his house was his studio. It had a piano in there, and for soundproof, he had egg crates around there. I remember a little kid, I don't know what song it was, but there's a piano in the middle, and my brother Clyde was going to play piano. My daddy was there. My uncle Alvin was there. A guy named Link Davis was there. I believe Cameron Hill was there. So the story of my daddy. So things are not going right in this session. And so Link Davis apparently had a little pint of something to drink. And my uncle loved that kind of stuff. They're drinking a little here. So it upset my dad. So he stopped everything in the recording session. And he said about Clyde, he said, Clyde wasn't doing anything wrong. He said, there's a young fool, pointed at Clyde, pointed at his brother, my uncle, and said, there's an old fool. I ain't bothering nobody. I'm about 2 years old, 3 years old, sitting against the wall. He said, there's a little bitty old fool. Killed all three of us because things weren't going right. But that studio, there's a book out called The House of Hits. Andy Bradley, who was one of the engineers there, wrote. Great, great book. If into that kind of thing, it's really very historical. It's still open now. People like Beyonce, people like that, who recorded there. Willie Nelson, Clyde recorded there many, many times. But that was his first studio. His front room of his house. I just remember egg crates on the walls for his soundproofing.
So you didn't get Prayer Room in the White House to become a big hit.
No.
He and politicians, evidently, he wasn't impressed with FDR either, didn't he? Tried to interrupt his.
Yeah, that's a good one there. In Beaumont, radio program during World War II, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the president. Daddy gets there, get ready to start the radio program. And of course, they'd always have people come watch the radio program, young girls and people like that. And walk in, and the engineer says, Mr. Alley, you're not going on tonight. What do you mean I'm not going on tonight? He said, you're being preempted by nationwide radio drifts by the president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And Daddy said, you're telling me that me, Shelly Lee Alley, is not going on the radio tonight? You, who are not old enough to have anywhere except on top of your head. He said, I want to talk to the manager. I forget his name. So he said, Shelly, here's the deal, Mr. Oh, yeah, I understand. He thought way more of his radio program than the president's address to the nation.
Was he impressed at all with any personalities or anybody other than musicians and singers? Was he at all, like I said, with politicians? Or I know Will Rogers may have been a fella he probably liked.
I'll tell that story sometime, but yeah, there were certain people that he would. Mainly, they were musicians, people in the musical field. Like I said, Gene Austin was his number one. I mentioned Gene Austin earlier. Gene Austin actually was in Dallas at one time and heard one of my daddy's radio programs and complimented Daddy's singing. And that's probably the biggest compliment he felt he ever got, that Gene Austin complimented his singing. It'd be like, if somebody comes along years ago and let's say Frank Sinatra complimented your singing, or somebody like that. Probably the biggest compliment he ever got was from Gene Austin.
Now, his musicianship and all, how much did he teach you or train you when you were growing up?
The main thing he taught me was this. He said, don't ever touch the hair on the fiddle bow. No, don't ever do that.
Yeah.
And be very careful about your musical instrument. It's almost like they're fragile. Don't worry about your mama; she'll be fine, But the musical instrument, he didn't sit down and teach me, but from being around him, harmonies were just automatic. Because he'd sing a song and say, "You sing the second part, you sing the third part," and just being around. For instance, playing. If you got together playing, you couldn't wear him out. He would play and play and play. Finally, can we do something else? Why would you want to do something else? Just keep on playing and play. You could not wear him out. I love to play, but after a while, you need to take a break. Not him. He'd take a break. He'd have to go to the bathroom and come back and keep on playing again. Just play and play and play. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Like I said, you could read his mind because you knew he was always thinking about music, no matter what's going on. Now, he would notice things like, back then, watching, let's say, a football game on TV, and he would say, "Man, look at that fella, how big his shoulders are. And I said, Daddy, they got shoulder pads on. And next time, look at that fella's shoulder. He never got that they were shoulder pads. And so that kind of impressed him. And but mainly music.